Good evening. Through growing up at Brooks and playing sports my whole life, I've attended a variety of summer camps. Some I was more embarrassed to admit that I went to than others. I've been to football camps, wrestling camps, baseball camps, the Brooks Day camp, and even a camp where we took care of animals. And then there's the speech, and then there's the camp I'm most embarrassed about going to, speech camp. Now you may be wondering what speech camp is and why I went there. No, I didn't need to learn how to speak English, but I did need to learn how to speak it with more fluency. I have a speech impediment known as a stutter, the kind of stutter you're born with, the kind of stutter that is always there and that can negatively affect your speech at any given time. Many of you have probably even heard me do it at times. Stuttering means to continue to talk with repeated involuntary repetition of sounds, especially with the initial consonants that appear in words. Anybody can get caught in a stutter, whether from talking too quickly or maybe just from being plain out nervous. I'm sure this has happened to mostly everyone in the room at one point or another. However, the stutter that I have is hereditary and has been affecting me ever since I learned to speak. I am the only one in my immediate family who stutters, although I have several family members on my dad's side who stutter as well. One of his sisters, both her sons, and one of his brothers used to stutter, and a couple of them still do. Stuttering occurs more frequently in men than in women. For every woman that stutters, there are roughly 2 men who do. Stuttering is genetic and it runs in families, but it can also be brought upon by things such as traumatic events or severe anxiety. There are many genes that are known to cause stuttering, and it affects the frontal cortex of your brain, the part of your brain that controls speech. The severity of a stutter does not run in families, however, meaning that having a family member who has a severe stutter would increase your chance of being born with one, but would not guarantee that yours would be as serious as theirs. Stuttering affects people differently. For some, it's minor. For others, it's so severe that it's hard to understand anything they say at all. Some people can outgrow their stutter, while others can't. Often, this correlates with the amount of practice that you put in to work on it. Chris, my dad's brother, who had a serious stutter when he was younger, has nearly outgrown it. Even though he still stutters from time to time, he has come a long way, and you probably wouldn't know that he had a speech impediment from talking to him. People who have been close with me for a long time know that my stutter has improved a great deal over the years, but I believe that I still have a long way to go. This speech serves as a good test for where I am currently in overcoming my speech impediment. When I was younger, my stutter dominated my conversations. I'm sure people had hoped that I'd just grow out of my own, but a couple years into school, it clearly wasn't going to happen without some help. So, after the second grade, I was encouraged to attend a speech camp for kids who had a speech impediment similar to mine. Okay, it's more like I was forced. I mean, what kid wants to spend their summer to work on talking? I certainly didn't. We all have a friend, or at least somebody we know, who takes way too long to say things. When they're talking, you just can't wait for them to finish and get it over with. You all have a friend like that, right? Well, to paint a picture for you of what speech camp was first like, imagine a whole camp full of kids just like this who weren't able to finish a sentence without choking up and taking forever to get to the point. Clearly, all 8 of us were struggling when we began there, and like me, a majority of us were forced to be there by our parents. Let's just say it wasn't the best summer experience I'd ever had. Yet, it wasn't my decision, so off to camp I went. The camp took place at Northeastern University in Boston. My longtime speech therapist, Adriana, who was nationally recognized for her work in stuttering, ran the camp, and she recommended to my parents that I attend. She was the first person who really showed me how to deal with my stutter, while also giving me the confidence to speak freely more often. I was comfortable working with her because she fully understood my speech impediment. It was always very patient in her approach. Monday through Friday, for 4 weeks, my mom or dad would drive me into Boston every morning to drop me off and every afternoon to pick me up. I spent those days practicing my speech with Adriana and her other speech therapists who worked alongside us that summer. I'd never been around anybody outside my family who stuttered, let alone kids my age who did so. It was reassuring to find out there were other kids in the same boat as me, and even some who were worse off. In that way, I was humbled, having encountered another kid who had a stutter so severe that it was difficult for him to finish even a single sentence without stuttering several times. Once we all figured out that it was an opportunity rather than a punishment to be at camp, we all worked a lot harder and tried to make the most of our time there. We grew together as a group as our stutters improved with the help of Adriana, her staff, and their unwavering support. They taught us a lot about stuttering in general, but most importantly, we were taught how to manage our stutters. For the first time, through working with Adriana, rather than forcing our way through words or rushing through what we had to say, we learned to utilize verbal tools that we could apply to our speech, such as pullouts when you encounter a stutter and ease into the word instead of forcing your way through it, and restarts when you encounter a stutter and restart the sentence just to get a fresh start. Still to this day, my parents have to remind me to use the very same techniques that I took away from camp. They are persistent about me going every day, trying my best, and completing the homework that I was assigned. Now at Brooks and speaking more fluently, as I look back on my experience at speech camp, I'm grateful that my parents made me go. In addition to the work ethic that my parents helped install for me dealing with my stutter, I truly believe that speech camp set me up with a good foundation to build from in outgrowing my stutter, my ultimate goal. By making it more manageable, camp helped set me up for success at Brooks, not necessarily just in the classroom, but in life as well. It's taught me that if I take a similar approach to things in the same way that I approach my stutter, with resilience and a positive attitude, that I can do whatever I set my mind to. My speech impediment has always been a challenge in my life, and that's just how it is. Everybody has challenges in their lives. Mine just happens to be more visible, or audible even. Even though it's a part of who I am, and probably always will be, I've tried hard to not let my stutter define the person that I am. It certainly wouldn't be the first thing out of my mouth if you were to meet me, but I have no problem talking about my stutter with people who are curious about why I talk the way I do. Living my life this far with a stutter has put things into a different perspective for me. It's broadened and deepened my view of the world and has given me greater empathy for others around me. I've learned a good deal from my stutter, and it's provided me with many opportunities to grow. In James 1:19 from the New Testament of the Bible, James said, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. It's definitely virtuous to have a good temper, but ignore that part of the letter. Rather, what you should take from it is, everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak." My stutter has made this piece of scripture meaningful in my life because of how it's honed my sense of hearing during times when I haven't been able to speak like I would have wanted to. With a stutter, it makes it hard for me sometimes in fast-paced conversations to add in my 2 cents. So at times when my stutter has dominated my speech, I've found that it's easier to listen. I consider myself to be an extrovert, so don't get me wrong. Sharing what you have to say is important, but it's also important to listen to others because you can learn a lot from other people. I believe my stutter has given me a greater appreciation for words, and I choose my words more carefully as a result. I've become a much better listener. When encountering a challenge in life, it's the way that you deal with it that decides the effect that it will have in your life. Instead of letting my stutter get worse by ignoring it or just refusing to speak, I decided early on to face it, and I've worked hard to minimize its effect in my life. I haven't let it stop me from doing anything that I would have wanted to do if I hadn't been born with a stutter. That's one of the main reasons that I decided to take this class in public speaking, in spite of my speech impediment, knowing that I would eventually have to give a final speech. My speech just happens to be about my own speech. Thank you.